Welcome to the Starting Over Podcast. I'm your host, Edward Shelton, aka Dark Logos, and this is a show where we talk about the strategies, tactics, and mechanics behind the game of heroclix. Oh man, it's late. It's like 3 in the morning. I need to go to bed soon. Got up, went to work, came home, took a nap. Went way longer than what I was planning. Oh man. But today's show is going to be a little bit shorter. And in part, I want to try to get something done and up before going into this weekend, because I'm going to be in Tulsa. But today's show is about something that I actually have like a legit concern about, and that's really the growth of the heroclix competitive community. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go over my concern real briefly, and then we're going to talk about some quick steps that can increase the quality and number of competitive players in heroclix. So here's my concern, straight up being 100% honest. The competitive scene is not growing. It's not. In actuality, the competitive scene is actually starting to shrink. Most people would say, like, Edward, you're the voice of, the rock and blah, 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 this, that, and the other. How can you say that? How can you say the competitive game is shrinking? For one main reason, I see the same usual suspects. It's the same people. Maybe one or two new faces, but it's the same people. And when you are constantly in that situation where I can list off 20 names and you can say, like, oh yeah, I know all those people, or I have a good idea of who those people are, or at least I can identify, over half of those names, and you could pretty much use the same list from like 2 years ago, there's a problem. Okay. Not only that, when I start hearing about what happened at Rock Nationals, it concerns me more. Mainly from the fact, and this is the reality, people are scared. I'm being blunt. People are scared. How can you host an event in Las Vegas and have less than 50 people for your tournament that's supposed to cover the majority of the West Coast, and the West Coast players petition for it? That's bad. It's really bad. It has nothing to do with Patrick, as some people might say, you've been targeting Patrick and Majestics a lot. Do you have it out for them? No, I don't. But in this case, in particular, there's nothing that Majestics could have done to grow the format. And here's where I more am frustrated about. And this is just from the insider knowledge that I get. If you have Team Vegas, which is there, stating that you have a pretty large community, yet there's politics that stops that community from coming together for a major event, then you shouldn't be hosting events. Doesn't matter where your event is at. That's just bad business. If Oregon, if the national championships was in Oregon and you can guarantee 40 players, which I'm not saying they can, then it would have been better to be in Oregon than it would have been in Las Vegas, even though Las Vegas is a better entertainment site to be in, quote unquote. Okay? But anybody that's traveled, really ask yourself, when you're traveling for a weekend and you're going to play heroclix as your main thing, how often do you go out that night and do something else? Not very often, if at all. Being 100 with you. So right there is just sort of this reality that sort of overlooking. Again, I'm not on the rock board. Some people might think I'm on the rock board or something, and I'm not. I don't make any of those decisions. Okay. But when you start hearing it's like, oh, we were scared to show up because we knew Majestics was coming, and we didn't want to play Patrick, and we didn't want to play Kevin, and we didn't want to play Justino, and blah, 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 blah. I'm sorry. That's weak. That's weak. And I may have just been like battle scarred from Tulsa enough, but that's weak. I guess. All right, and some people might say like, oh, you're stirring up the West Coast players. No, this really is just more of the quintessential example of what's really going on. Because when I start going around and looking at other places that were like huge battlegrounds for the game, the same thing's going on. People that started in the Rock, then established themselves in the Rock, proved that they were good players, the Rock developed their skill set, and then boom, they're doing well on other stages, whether officially with the Rock or with heroclix, WizKids proper. People are getting afraid. And so they'll say to themselves, why am I going to commit to this entry fee, get nothing, get beat up by, blah, 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 blankety blank player, and then, move on and spend the rest of my afternoon looking at somebody else play. And this is a real problem. Now, the other issue is that you can't establish like leagues, like realistically, nor can you establish like grades. Like the heroclix as a game is not that big, let alone venues having the luxury of being able to do that. It's just not there. So even if you said, hey, there's this heavy class weight league where you have, Patrick, Easton Brock, Paris Gordon, Goku, and whoever else is on your list, and they are playing in that league, and then everybody else plays in, the Fun Night, casual league. Even if you force segregate and say like, no, Patrick, you can't go in there. There's going to be some shark dude that's going to game the system to stay in that league to get the maximum amount of rewards. So you would have to like auto graduate people, and the moment you would auto graduate people, they would quit. Okay, so it is just a problem overall that I'm seeing. Like for every 1 to 2 new face that I might see at a major event, I'm definitely I definitely know there's at least 25 players that were afraid of even showing up. The only thing that's really keeping competitive going is the new player that is naive cocky. The person who was good at Magic or whatever other game that they were at before, found heroclix, liked it, noticed that the community was small, and thought that they could come in and be a big fish in a small pond. Come to find out, like, no, there's an ocean with whales in it and freaking krakens and stuff. Just because you're an otter, or sorry, not an otter, just because you're a puffer fish in your small little pond, doesn't mean you're going to stand up to, the kraken or the great white shark even. So there's that. That's really what's keeping competitive going. And I think from a business perspective, this is going to be a problem, and it's going to end up reflecting back on the Rock and then WizKids slightly, but WizKids creates events primarily for casuals. But if this continues the way it does, and you can't like bait and hook casuals in to competitive events, eventually WizKids will reduce their support for more hardcore play. Okay, I'm just being honest. You can already tell, even with some of their design, they really don't understand hardcore play. All right, so let's go into some of the solutions real quick. Solution number one, study. And this is the part where like 80% of the, not necessarily my average listener, but anybody that's trying to get good, or even trying to help people get good, that's where they fall off. It's like, I'm here to have fun. Why would I study? That seems counterintuitive. Well, again, you have to study so that you don't get whooped. If I say I like doing karate, but then I go to a karate tournament and I didn't study technique and watch videos of previous masters and winners, or even my competition, that would be dumb. No one goes on a professional football team, or even a high school football team, and doesn't have to study. The naivety of most people when it comes to like this game is, it's a bunch of superheroes, why should I have to work? And I would say, if you want to get good at anything, you're going to have to work. Just start. It doesn't like land in your lap and like, oh yeah, I'm the world champion. It was just my year and my luck. No, there's work. And I can say that from having worked with world champions. Like there's work. Okay, so straight up, like, you know, studies involve. If you're not subscribed to Majestics on their YouTube channel, go do that. I've been watching it lately, learning a lot of different insights of having other people that didn't design the team pick up a team. And some things that I thought like, oh yeah, I play it like this. Watching a few of the Majestics guys actually play it different than how I would actually play it has been a little bit enlightening. And so it's beneficial. And so, like, there's other podcasts, there's other YouTubers out there that you can watch. There's some heroclix YouTubers. In all honesty, I don't want to say it's a waste of time because it's your entertainment hour. But there's a lot of YouTubers out there for heroclix that really don't contribute much in terms of helping players. It's just really like, here, check out my swag, homie. Check out my stuff. They don't even attempt to give good advice. And there's some out there that just vent, and I understand that, but most of their venting isn't even beneficial. Like, there's nothing that you can take from their venting and use it to make a proactive solution. You know, am I going to call names out? No. If you, of course, you probably already listened to Two Clicks from KO. That's a huge other podcast that I would say is definitely helping shape the meta. You know, go read your MajesticCCG.com. Whether you choose to pay or not, that's up to you. But there's things that you can do. The community has gravitated from AC Realms for a good reason. It's, number one, refusal to deal with the toxicity of the community, and number two is that it's easier to go into your own corner when your whole corner is a world, and Facebook has established those worlds. If you want to go talk to hardcore meta players, you can go to a group for that. If you want to talk with traders, you can go into a group for that. If you want to go into casuals and just, you know, specifically with scenarios and whatever, you can go to a group for that. But like learning, in all honesty, HC Realms is like fell off because it couldn't adapt with the reality of Facebook. And Facebook is, I hate to say it's killing like niche communities, but that's another thing. Well, niche community websites, that's a better way of putting it. Number two that has to go on, something in between a SQ and a win a map is required for people to invest their time into to get better. Win a maps initially was designed, this is from talking with Howard, initially win a maps were designed as supplemental stuff for your monthly tournaments and kits, so that you could have an event, give out some, you know, TCG player points, and sort of whet the appetite of the individual and hand out a free map, okay, to the winner, okay. That was about it. Its goal wasn't to try to develop the players to get used to the rock format or even get players used to higher level competitive play. You go literally from a kiddie pool to an Olympic pool, depending on where you live. Once you go from a win map to an SQ, okay, just straight up. And then when you're going into a regional, again, depending on where you live, you're going from an Olympic pool to trying to swim across the English Channel. All right, that's just straight up it. If I'm going to say like, hey, new person learning how to swim, let me just send you into the Olympic pool. Yeah, it's 20 feet to the bottom. That's okay. Just waggle your legs and you'll float to the top. You'll be fine. No, they're going to drown. Okay, and so when you look at that huge disparity between, hey, kiddie pool, yeah, I can stand up in this water, to, hey, super cute, oh my gosh, I can easily die. There's nothing in between really to fill that void, and really the community itself needs to figure out whatever that is. Do I have the magical solution for that? No. But it does require something that a lot of venues don't want to do, and that's really multiple venue support. And I know some areas aren't, lucky enough to have that. But even if it was so much as, the tri-state, small venue dojo challenge, just a tournament, hosted in a neutral territory, sponsored by 3 or 4 different stores, and just said, hey, here's our player base. Let's get together in this neutral location. The event, space is rented out by, part of the money is put out by, all the stores. All the little stores are going to have their little product there. And, you just get your guys together and girls together to have like a nice tournament. And, the winner gets that year's bragging rights for that store. I think that would actually be like maybe that next step. It might actually make, some venues think about, hey, maybe we can do a Super Q, or maybe we can do something a little bit more interesting, or create some sort of dynamic that makes players come out and play. Okay, because really when it comes down to it, the incentive for a player to get better in heroclix is minimal. Really minimal. And here's why I say that. Again, I can go back and get all my prize support off of eBay for hella cheap. And even then, about 80% of the prize support, you don't even play. And the stuff that you do actually play, you can pay for it for like $20. So it's no different than an SR. Hell, it's a low-end SR in some cases. Okay, so right there, you're automatically looking at the incentive for the average player to get better isn't there. So you need something that you can add in that ups the stakes from the local tournament or the weekly tournament, that provides a diverse amount of competition so that players can, grow and develop. Does that mean like this whole dojo challenge thing that you're playing a rock format? No, really not. But it will require you, to think about whatever the scenario is and play it. And here's why I say like rock rules or even the official heroclix rules don't matter. There are several key factors that a player has to get used to in the game of heroclix or chess or any other mental tactical game. And if they're going to play competitively, number 1 is time management. Number 2 is stress management. Number 3 is resource management. Okay, if you can't manage your time, you're going to lose. If you can't manage your stress, eventually you're going to implode. If you can't manage your resources, whether that's your water, getting up to take a break, being able to keep track of your stuff, you're going to lose. Okay, So you need situations where I would call safe spaces for you to learn these skills, because at a local tournament, people, they really don't care about any of those three. So anyway, moving on. The last thing that I think that needs to happen, and I've talked with Kevin DeFruz about it slightly, and we had a bunch of different things we were talking about before World Cup. But you really need to start seeing the development of more teams. And whether that's through mentoring or, just, creating a blueprint so that people can just straight follow them, or even more so, having some sort of like draft, that would be great. Like having some sort of heroclix draft, where you could trade draft picks or whatever. I'd actually be down for that, maybe for 1 year. But having like even saying like, oh hey, we're starting our new team. Can we please draft blankety blank from so and so. And I think that would actually be a great thing. And here's why I say that. Being in the Midwest, Tulsa is a hotbed, and people say like I hype it because I live in that region. I go to that tournament, and I know Chip, and I know Lord Cardinal, and I know all the people involved, and I've known them for a couple years now, and so I would be their friend, quote unquote, and so I would be hella biased, and that's fair. That's a fair quote. I do know all of them. I have partaken of their services. They have helped me out at times, So if you want to say like at this point I'm being biased, fine. Full transparency. All right, but here's the thing. When I go to Tulsa, no matter which time, I know that I'm going to encounter at least 2 to 3 different teams at Tulsa. It's not just going to be Juggernaut. It's not just going to be Uncanny Clicksmen. It's not just going to be Agents. It's not just going to be Ragnarok. All right, and that is a huge thing. Where I know that when I wave my nice little Phoenix Nest shirt, and I have my crew there whenever, that we are part of this sort of tradition of multiple teams actually battling it out and showing like, hey, if you look at the top 16, yeah, one team at this tournament might have 2 or 3 guys in the finals, but might not have the champion. One team might have one guy that's the champion and nobody else in the finals, or another team might have a person that's second and third place. It's an interchangeable literal Game of Thrones that brings folks back. And not only that, you start seeing people that like travel together form unofficial teams, and because of that, it makes everybody so much better. Prime example I can think of, yes, I'm a hell of fan of hers, Sarah Edwards. Sarah Edwards, when I first played her a while back, I would say she had a high level of skill, not that much information. One little point and tidbit that I gave to her, she came back next tournament, used that information, went up like gangbusters, won an event. Did super well at the event. And then every tournament that her and her family and friends have shown up to, she keeps showing better and better tech, showing a development, showing a different, unique play style that I just find like really interesting to watch. Okay. Now, here's where I would come back. If you take a talent like hers and you would put her in the West Coast, the amount of tournaments in the year that she would engage in would be cut down to half. And then, yes, you're still dealing with a high quality of skill on the West Coast. I'm not fronting on that. But really, when it would come down to the diversity of opponents, if Majestics is your main team and Vegas is your number 2 team, I'm just being realistic from results and turnouts. Vegas is your number 2 team. You don't have any other teams there to do anything, and Majestics is hosting. Where is the iron sharpening iron? It's not there. And it makes sense why the Majestics players travel. Not only do they get to see different venues, it's just there's no other competition there that's willing to travel. Yes, Cali is hella spread out. Fully understand that. But again, it also comes down to, like, you know, development in other teams, because Cali is not the only state on the West Coast. You know, what happened to this Utah development of Meta? You know, Oregon, Washington. What's going on there? Are those states dead? Well, they held state championships, so they're not dead. Where are those players at? And again, you know, I'm not talking smack. I got one of my guys I recruited. He's from Arizona, but even then, when we start breaking down some analysis and other things with me working with him, it's like, yo, what is the quality of the players that you're dealing with on a regular basis? And there's some real questions raised. Okay. And again, I'll say this. Have I had a fortunate heroclix life? Yes. Have I had tons of opponents that have pushed me to become better? Yes. Have I dealt with sharks? Yes. Have I been a judge? Yes. Have I, you know, had a lot of heroclix information thrown at me? Yes. Okay, I'll say I had the somewhere in between a golden and silver heroclix spoon in my mouth the entire time I've played this game. Okay, not going to front. Some of you are saying it's hard out here for a guy who can't barely afford a CUR. Fully understand that world. Been unemployed. Fully understand that world. Okay, but where I would definitely say is the competitive scene as it is now can't continue. It really can't. And most people won't form teams, won't, you know, collaborate resources, and they won't admit, like, our game is hella weak. Like, a lot of players really won't admit that. And they think that if they pretend they're strong, then they really are strong until they play the strong. And I give, you know, the episode that I did with my man Will Holland not too long ago, and I remember it. He was telling me, like, hey, I went to this venue, I played this casual team that I've been mulling over, and I beat everybody but somebody running, you know, a bunch of kaiju, and I almost beat him, and then they're freaking out. Okay, why are you freaking out? Somebody came in from the outside and showed you that there's a whole different world of tech. Why are you freaking out? Why are you, you know, quitting the game? Because somebody that shows up maybe once, at most twice a year, proves that they have a skill set that can threaten you. You know, why are you, you know, not going out to, you know, tournaments and just saying, like, hey, there's a lot more in the world for me to learn. Let me go out 100 miles and see what I can find. Let me drive for an hour and a half, you know, to some other venue, and just make a day trip, you know, hell, make a Pokemon adventure of it if you want to, and then just encounter another play group. You know, I could tell you from when I lived in Topeka and I drove an hour to go play with another play group a couple of times, there's a few different things that I picked up, you know, and I'm dealing with stuff in the middle of Kansas, you know. Same thing when I was in Tulsa. When I first started the game in Kansas City, I met Mega Lotus Man, and he was the toughest player. He's one of the toughest players I've ever played. And so the few times that I started off, I actually won a tournament. I was ecstatic. But when I went to the Wizard World qualifiers, I realized that while I have to deal with Mega Lotus Man, there are other people on his level. And they're thinking different stuff, and they're working on different stuff, and they're playing with a bunch of different, little rules, nuances, and stuff. And it sort of opened my eyes, like, yeah, I'm not a horrible player, but I'm not the best player. And these guys around here in this area, or in this 100 to 300 mile radius, they're pretty good as well. I need to become better if I want to compete with them. So that's mainly it. I know some people might say, like, hey, what does this really mean going forward? It means what it means. It means that really, if we're going to survive on a competitive scene, a lot of stuff has to change. I really think the main thing that has to change is there has to be something in between a winner map and a super cube. Not necessarily sponsored by The Rock. It's not The Rock's responsibility. Do they benefit from it? Yes. It's not WizKid's responsibility. Do they benefit? Yes. But there has to be something in between that super cube, winner map, and WizKid's open level that draws players in to come play, and force them to work on tech and think about tech, so that there's a competitive scene. Now the problem is what's the incentive, and then how do you maintain that incentive? And because realistically, let's be honest, most people wouldn't go to the WizKids Open if they didn't offer a full set of chases. Like con exclusives bearing, because depending on the year, con exclusives can be great or con exclusives can suck. But realistically, the chases are what brought people out to the WizKids Open last time. This time, I don't know, the Spider-Man chases. So, yeah, but there has to be something. Even if you have like first place wins 4 con exclusives, or first place wins, 3 con exclusives and 2 ID cards or something like that. There needs to be something, like I said, in between. Or even, a venue or a couple of venues flushing out a lot of old prizes that, have been sitting around, like the big prizes, the Cyclopses, the Necrons and stuff like that. Just being like, hey, boom, here you go. This is what we came to win it. Come out to win this. For yourself, trade bait or eBay. So, but yeah, the development part, I really do think that most players, once they realize what the big leagues are like, will humble themselves to learn. I mean, I'm still playing in the big leagues, and I still like, I need to learn some more stuff. Okay, but the guy is like, hey, I'm king of the world. That dude will never learn. So, all right, that's it for today's episode. I know it's a lot shorter than normal, and I know KJ is listening to this. He's like, you're just stirring this nest, man. You're stirring this nest. But realistically, the competitive community has to grow. It has to find some level of adapting. If not, it is going to die out, and it will die out really, really hard, and it's going to be even more difficult for the game to recover. And if people don't understand why competitive scene is really good for the game, Look at the game pre-rock and how long it took for WizKids to adapt to the meta. Like, literally, it took them a year to adapt to broke stuff. Now, at least they're adapting within 4 to 6 months, or at least a watch list. Okay? So, just saying, if you think it was bad, it's bad now, or whatever. Like, no. With no competitive scene, like, stuff just stays broken for a long period of time. Anyway, you can follow me on Twitter at StartOverPod. It came from outer space and told me that there's a race of peaceful techno-organic people that look like Cameron Hodge that put fruit on spikes and then put it over fire, and it tastes delicious. You can find out when the newest show is up on the Twitter. You can also hit that like button if you like this episode. You can hit that subscribe button if you like this episode, or if you're not subscribed. You can email me at startingoverpodcast@gmail.com. Startingoverpodcast@gmail.com if you wish to opine. Keep it piffy, keep it interesting, keep it awesome, baby. I like to give shout outs to the cats that have emailed me some questions about the Lex and Joker duo. That figure at 75 points is only viable if you can find a combo to work with it. If you can't find a combo to work with it, it's not worth using. World's Finest is so much better. So much better. But no one believes me about World's Finest, and that's fine. Anyway. Also, any previous corrections about the uses of, Chameleon and who works and who doesn't, thank you very much. I found out Mystique doesn't work, and I'm so sad. But I'm also glad, too, because that's a little bit BS right there. Yeah. If you want to support the show, you can go and buy a cool Phoenix Nest shirt or Starting Over Podcast shirt. If you want a specific color scheme, let me know. And I have a template, and I can upload a Phoenix in your color. So just let me know, and I can tell you when it's up. And not only when I upload the new shirt, it also automatically goes on sale, so you can get a discount. All right, that's it. Thank you for listening, and remember, we all have to start over sometime.